So coming to the demo. Coming to the demo today, I would be demoing an organization chart. So this is a perfect example of a composite pattern. There's a CEO and there's a CEO and these four people, the two managers and one accountant and one HR. They report to the CEO, and there are three engineers who report to the engineering manager, and there's one sales engineer who reports to the sales manager. So the CEO and these two managers, they are examples of composites, while the rest of the nodes, the accountant, the HR, and all these four engineers, they are examples of leaves. So the UML diagram of this structure would look like this. There is an interface called employee, and this interface implements some common behaviors such as print out information. You basically print out your information, your name, and whom you report to. Get designation, get subordinates if any, get name, and get reports to. That is, you report to which person, the CEO or the manager, like that. So these are common methods that both the leaf as well as the composite would employ. And coming to the leaf, each leaf has its so each person has his name, employee ID, designation, and reports to whom, and these additional getters and setters, and getters, setters, and some extra methods. And the composite has got these three critical methods: hire, fire, and replace. So hire is for hiring new employees, fire is for firing employees, and replace means if one employee has been fired, you replace that employee. That's why I wrote an additional replace method. And so the last class here is a client class. There is an interface called employee, and it has some common methods such as print info, get subordinates, get designation, etc. So these methods are common to each employee. There are two classes, one is leaf, one is composite, and both these classes implement the interface called iEmployee. And lastly, there's one client class called builder swing. So this thing initializes the GUI components, and it can be used to manipulate the composite data structure, to send methods to hire, fire, etc. Okay, coming to the demo. This is the employee interface with these given methods. There is a leaf in which each leaf has a name, employee ID, designation, reports to whom, whether the CEO or which manager. This is the constructor, and these are the getter and setter methods. And having to have a look at the composite. As you know, the composite is a manager or an engineer, so each person would have his name, ID, designation, reports to, etc. And so this is one important data type, list of subordinates. So all the persons who report to that person, they are stored as a list in this variable called subordinates. And then you have these are your regular methods, your getter and setter methods. And so we have these four important methods: print info, hire, fire, and replace. I'll explain all these methods one by one. First, let me run this. And so this is your client class. This initializes all the GUI components, And it also the second thing it does is to create this structure that you call the hire methods. The CEO as you can see over here, the CEO is hiring the engineer, manager, HR, accountant, sales manager, and these managers in turn are hiring these other leaf structures. So in this way, once you run this whole composite structure gets created. So this is how it looks. This is how it looks on the GUI. And if you want to see this in the console, just a second. So if you call this print info method on the CEO, as you know, by the principle of recursive composition, the CEO calls print method on its children, and they in turn will call this method on their children, and all the components will print out their respective details on the console. So this is how it looks like, and this is how the console looks like. So you have a CEO. This is the name of the name, the designation, and reports to whom. Since the CEO does not report to anybody, it's a null. And then you have these four people: Dirk, Mary, Tom, Brad. So there's Dirk here, and there are these three engineers who report to Dirk: John, Thomas, Richard. Then you have these two leaves, Brad and Tom. Nobody reports to them. And you have another composite called Mary. She's the sales manager, and there are two people reporting to her, Joe and Anne. So this is how, using a composite data structure, I have created this organization chart. Now we can call some hiring and firing methods. So suppose the CEO wants to fire Tom. So the minute I click on this remove button, a mouse click event is generated here, and this is where it is, and it calls the fire function written in the composite. So the minute I click on remove, this method will be called. Basically, an object of the Tom object will be passed to fire, and it will get removed from the CEO's list. So, and in place of Tom, you can, the structure, there's a vacancy created over there. So basically, firing a leaf is simple, but when you want to fire a composite, as I said, because of recursive composition, when you fire a composite, the entire composite structure, the composite structure, for example, Dirk. So the structure consists of all these three guys who are the leaf nodes. So all of them will get fired. Since I want to avoid this, I tweaked the fire method a little bit. That if this is my fire method, and suppose I pass Dirk to this method, means if I want to fire Dirk, so if Dirk has got subordinates, then I create a temporary data structure, an array list, and here and I assign the subordinates to temp, and they get hired by the manager. So this is how it looks. There's a vacancy created here. All these guys would have got deleted, but I store them in a temp node, and they all happen to they report to the CEO directly. So this is how you call fire method for a composite. And let us just fire random people. This is how it would look. And if and the last method is replace. So if I want to look for a replacement for Dirk, suppose I'm hiring somebody else. This is how in the constructor I'm passing the name of that person and his and her designation, engineering manager. And so as soon as I click the hire method, in the composite, this void, this replace method gets called. the replace method gets called, in which the employee gets hired again. uh, and secondly we secondly in this piece of code, uh, any people who were assigned to the CEO because of their manager got fired, they get relinked back to they get relinked back to this guy if you study this piece of code. And lastly, and they get removed by the CEO object. So these three things happen in the replace function. So yeah, so if you want, we can at each time print info method. I call the print info method, and okay, this is how it would look, this last structure. So there is Kate, who is the CEO. There is Brad, HR. There is Mary, sales manager, with only one sales engineer reporting to her. There is Anne, who is the engineering manager and reporting to the CEO. And there are these three guys working under Anne. So this is how this is how I have manipulated the organization chart. And okay,